Welcome to Culture Clash Parenting, the podcast where Astrid and Marissa share their joys and challenges of raising kids in foreign lands. Join us for heartwarming tales, practical tips, and lots of laughter as we navigate language barriers, blend traditions, and celebrate the beautiful mess of parenting across cultures. Let's dive into this adventure together. Hey everyone, welcome to Culture Clash Parenting, episode 13, Baker's Dozen. So we thought it would be really funny today to talk about time zones because we almost missed this call, our scheduled time, because the US has changed their clocks, but France hasn't. So our time difference is different than usual. And so we had a different idea of what time to be present.
So our lucky 13 didn't exactly work out. But here we are,
We're here.
a little late.
We made it.
So we're going to keep this one brief. Hi, everyone. And we're going to talk about the time zones and save what we had actually planned for today for, in 2 weeks from now.
And just go with the flow, unlike the
Exactly.
time zones, which randomly seem to change. Like when we first moved here, we changed time. We changed our clocks the same time that the US did. And then I don't know if the US went changed when they changed their clocks or if we decided to push back when we changed our clocks, but now there's a 2 week difference between Europe and the US.
That's
Both in
funny.
spring and in the fall.
In the fall as well, because
Yeah.
it's funny that you say that. When you first moved there, did you also, was it both fall and spring that was exactly the same? Because I remember when I was in college here, which was way before you moved to France, because, remember, we're old. So, um, but I had my brother came over to visit on his spring break when he was still in high school. And he, in the US, we changed during that time that he was here, and then he went back, and then they changed the clocks there. And he always says that was an hour of my life that I never got back.
Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, again, like premenopause brain slash like mom brain slash whatever. Um, I feel like it was closer, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's always been this way. I do know that there was at some point in the 15 years we've been here, Google Calendar instituted like a second, you can have like a second time zone show up on your Google Calendar. And I was like, oh, thank goodness for that functionality because like now I can have the times show up on my Google Calendar, like two different times show up on my Google Calendar.
That's
Um,
interesting.
but yeah, maybe I'm remembering wrong. I just feel like it was maybe I was just younger and it was easier to keep track of the time
The
differences.
brain was still working better, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And maybe it changed in between and then changed back, or it changes every year. Who knows? But anyway, this year we're off.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and all this started because, like we said, we were like texting each other and she's like, are we still meeting today? Because it was her normal time, but not, or yeah, it was your 10:30, which is when we usually meet, but it's usually my 5:30, but it was my 4:30. And I was just like, wait, what do you mean? Like, we're not meeting for an hour. So there is a lot of confusion that has been happening in the last 2 weeks. I've missed a couple of.
Important
I feel like more of a chicken with my head cut off the last 2 weeks.
Well, hey, at least in Europe, unless you're talking to somebody in Britain, you're still in the same time zone.
Yes.
So I am currently working on a cover story for a local magazine, and the one guy that just bought this place that I'm writing about 6 months ago, he's like, "Okay, well, call me at this time. Anytime between 11 and 12 will be great." I'm like, "Great, I'll call you at 11." Called him at 11. He says, "Good afternoon." I'm like, "No, it's still morning, right?" He says, "No, I'm in Florida." Like, oh, well. then you are a time zone ahead. I did not know that because the place is in Illinois. Well, anyway.
Right. Yeah, I always thought, and I always thought that was really confusing. And I remember in high school when I studied, like I went on to a camp one summer and there was a girl, I think she was from Indiana, and the town that
Oh, where they don't switch
where
in
they don't
Indianapolis.
switch. Yeah, but she lived like right on the border. And so she was saying that like, yeah, it was like all confusing. And then when we went to Sean's brother's wedding, so to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's wedding, they got married in Puerto Vallarta, but the hotel was in Nuevo Vallarta in Mexico, and the time zones are different. And so, like, literally, like, you needed to know where they had to tell you what city, what city each event was taking place in, and then like the local time there. And it was like, oh, okay, like we gotta leave in an hour to be somewhere that's like seems like it's 2 hours from now, but it's like a 5 minute drive.
Talk
So
about making it complicated for your guests.
yeah, like I mean, I think those things we just don't. I mean, like I said, thank goodness for Google.
But yeah, for everybody who's listening from other parts of the world and doesn't know about the time zones in the United States, there's literally one particular part of the whole state of Indiana that doesn't change. They stay on what in Europe we call winter time or daylight, not non-daylight savings time, I guess here,
Standard
all
time.
year round. Standard time. Standard time. Okay. So standard time and daylight savings time, whereas in Europe it's summertime and wintertime, both in German and in French.
Yeah.
It kind of makes a little more sense.
Yeah. And then, like you said, like this place in Indiana, and then I think Arizona in the US as well doesn't change as a state, doesn't change times. So
I
sometimes
did
they're
not know
in
that.
Central Time and sometimes they're in Pacific Time and sometimes they're in Mountain Time.
I
So the
did
US
not know.
has four time zones, right? If
Four
Eastern,
plus the extra two. No,
right.
it isn't. No, five. Because Alaska is 3 hours. Well,
Oh,
maybe.
yeah. I don't even know if Alaska, if you're listening from Alaska or Hawaii, are you guys on the same time zone? I think you're in different time zones.
Yeah, tell us what your time zone is. Put it in the
Um,
note.
well, and part of the reason we thought this would be a funny thing to talk about from a culture clash parenting perspective is because Astrid and I are not necessarily known for being on time people. It's one of the things that bonded us together when we first met. Like, so, but it's interesting because Germans, like the stereotype of Germany is that like it's very punctual. And I remember like going to Germany and like the train left at like the exact minute that it said it was going to leave. And Sean was like, oh yeah, this is like Switzerland. Like he got it because he grew up in that culture. And I and we had been living in France for a while, and I was like, everything is just like, especially in Bordeaux, they talk about the 15 minutes Bordelais, like the 15-minute like Bordeaux time. Everything's like 15 minutes late. And I was like, yeah, like I don't think I've ever been on a train that's left on time in France. Now, but we were just when we went to Paris a couple weeks ago, it left on the second. Like we were watching the clock, and all of a sudden the train started moving, and Owen was like, "Oh my, mom!" Train's leaving on time, like to the second. So maybe
I'm
things have
so
changed.
I'm so surprised that you would say that about the German train. They are known to be notoriously not on time. There are whole songs made about the Deutsche Bahn that's just not on time. You know, sometimes they just don't come at all. Here, take and they constantly switch platforms too. So it's supposed to leave on platform 13, and you get up there, and like 5 minutes before it's supposed to leave, they're like, "Oh well, by the way, we changed it to platform 3. So now you've got all your luggage and put a stroller and whatnot, and you're running through the entire train station to get somewhere else. So wherever, I mean, your train must have been traveling between Switzerland and Germany
Maybe,
because
maybe it
otherwise
was a
it
Swiss
wouldn't have
train.
been on time.
Maybe it was a Swiss train. That's
Just
really
why
funny.
the stereotype doesn't make sense. Here, people are like, well, you should be on time. You're German.
Yeah, it's definitely a stereotype. I was told that Germans are on time. Um, I was raised with that And my mom grew up in Brazil, right? So my mom was never on time, and it drove me crazy as a kid. And so I would always try and be like 10 to 15 minutes early as like when I was like responsible for myself. Um, and it's funny because I was really good when the kids were little, and then like I don't know, like life burnout, kids, I don't know what age, like not caring anymore. I don't know what it was, but at some point I just stopped being like super on time and like
You
or
moved to
early.
France.
Yeah, in France, I stopped being early and I started being like exactly on time. And now I'm like 5 to 10 minutes late, like for consistent. Unless I'm teaching if I'm like actively teaching a yoga class, I will get there 10 to 15 minutes, but I will leave at like the very last minute that I need to leave so that I can get there. And I will sit in the car being like, I should have left 5 minutes ago. Why did I wait? Like, I wasn't really
Isn't
doing anything.
isn't beating the GPS time a kind of an extreme sport? At least for me, it is.
Totally, totally.
But that's funny. You at some first of all, you said when your kids were little, you were still always on time. That was when I stopped being anywhere close to being on time. Like before that, I always worked on the academic quarter. Like in Germany, you have the professors at universities don't show up until 15 minutes after whatever it said the lecture would start. And it's called the academic quarter, or
It's like the
CT
quinze minutes por
tempore.
day.
Right. So, and my parents always worked on that when they said, hey, be home at 1, I would literally ask, CT cum tempore or ST sine tempore? Do you want me there, at 1 a.m. sharp or 1 a.m. plus 15 minutes? And that's how I taught my kids too. But I stopped even trying to be on time after my son was born because, well, my daughter, the first one, was a champion nurser. She would, 15 minutes and back again 2, 3 hours later, 15 minutes. I could set my clock after her nursing schedule. With my son, it was just, oh, well, whenever if you're hungry. So I would try to get my daughter to preschool and then he'd be like, oh, well, now I am going to scream bloody murder because now I'm hungry. I'm like, I tried feeding you 15 minutes ago. And so there was just no,
No,
it
it's
was all
scheduled.
done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do feel like there was a period, like I said, when you and I met, I was never on time. So there was definitely a period before, like during the pregnancy, before I had kids, where I had where I worked on Marissa time or whatever, as long as I didn't have to be, responsible to somebody else. So I'm definitely an obliger. Um, I would show up early for work. I would get to the bus stop early because I didn't want to miss the bus because then I'd have to wait half an hour for the next one. Um, and I think that's what it is. Like for me, like I used to be early when there was somebody depending on me or when there was like when I was meeting somebody. So I would always get to school early to pick up the kids. Um,
I do too,
and
because otherwise
then
I get charged.
yeah, it's a whole nother episode.
Getting to work early? No, no, you're not. Like I teach on Saturdays, and supposedly you're supposed to be there early. I'm like, you're not paying me until 9 a.m. Why would I
Yeah.
get there anywhere closer to 5 minutes before?
For those type like that, I think that's with yoga. It's like I have to set up my mats and I need to get like everything out of the car and do so. There's like preparation. So if the class is starting, I feel like I need to be there 15 minutes before at minimum, if not 30, to set up the room and then like ground myself. But if it's teaching or like um yeah, something that doesn't require setting space up, I will get there at the last minute. But it is really interesting because I think, it's interesting to see the difference in my kids and what you're describing with like, one kid being like, you could set a clock to her schedule, to her nursing schedule, and the other one being like, I'm working on my own time. Um, it's very similar for me too. Like, and I think I now realize how much like my younger son, Zach does not like to be late. And so like he has an alarm on his watch that goes off at 7:47 so that he leaves the house at 7:50 to get to school at 7:53 because we live 3 minutes away, like a 3 minute walk, and the gates don't open until 8. And he would rather be, and class doesn't start until 8:12, 8:15. So he would rather be like there before the gates open and um and be like the first one there than possibly be late. And Owen's the opposite. Owen likes to be early. He doesn't like to be late, but he's like, what time can I leave to be there like 2 or 3 minutes early? Like he doesn't need to be super early. Um,
That's hilarious. That it
and so it's interesting to see their personalities and how like, yeah,
So how were they in terms of nursing? Because Julian is he frequently misses the bus in the morning. So then I have to drive. And just say, so I'll get a tardy. Okay, whatever. And and Francisca walks to school, and I'm like, I can drive you. She says, no, because now I know how much time I need, and
yeah.
nuts.
How were they nursing? They were very, Owen was definitely the one who, I think his personality is still like this, right? Like, um, Owen was like, we'll just take a sweet time. Owen's very much like, I know when I know in my body, just like intuitively when I need to eat, when like I'm gonna be hungry in 5 minutes, so I'll go down to the kitchen now. Like I know I need to be at school in 20 minutes and it takes 15 minutes to get there, so I'm gonna leave now. Like there's he's very good at sort of his own like understanding his needs and his body and time. And right, like he was the one who was like, why are you inducing me? I'm fine. I'm just gonna hang out here. Like you can push for 3 hours, mom. Like I'm doing good, right? Like he was like, why are you forcing me out of this nice, comfy, cozy womb? Zach was like, get me the hell out of here. Like 10 minutes after we got to the hospital, he was born. Um, and he's
That
always
might be
been
a
like,
first.
yeah, yeah, but it's also his personality. Like he was the baby in utero that was constantly kicking, constantly moving, right? Like I mean, I remember calling you being like, I haven't felt the baby move when I was pregnant with Owen. Like I was constantly drinking orange juice before going to ultrasound appointments because he would just lay there and the ultrasound technician would be like, I can't get the images that I need because he's not moving. And so like, please drink some orange juice before you come. Um, Give him a sugar boost. So yeah, their personalities were just always so different. And but he's very like, yeah, like, and so Zach was very much like, um, I'm hungry, I need food now. And if food wasn't ready now, like 5 minutes later when the food was ready, or like when I was ready to nurse him, he was like, he had moved on. Right. Same with sleep. He was like, my window is right now. If you don't put me to sleep right now, I'm going to party for another 2 hours. Like, and Owen was just like, yeah, it's just fine. Just put me in my bed, turn on the white noise, and I'll figure out how to put myself to sleep.
Right.
It's very different personalities.
I wonder if part of that is first and second child, or even then the influence of Zach having been born in France, where you put kids much more on a schedule. Like I feel like in the United States, kids are not kids kind of rule the house in this country. Um, and everything just kind of revolves around the child as soon as they're born, and part of that is like their toys are everywhere. In Germany, the kids have a children's room. They their own bedroom is also their playroom, and that is where their toys are. Their toys are not all over the house. There is no the basement that's a playroom because their playroom should be their own room, and then you can close that door if need be. Right? And in the United States, it's just not like that. And then parents will start feeding the kids at 5 or 6 p.m. Like they don't, whereas in Europe, yeah, so dinner is not until 7 or 8, if
Yeah.
even. It really depends. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there were so many differences, and that's like a whole nother episode too, right? So many differences between my pregnancies, so many differences between um even like their their daycare environments.
I was going to say, like the crash has set places, set times,
Well, but
but
Zach was with a new. So Zach was in a was with a was at at a home daycare like
a
where
day mother is what we call in
day
German.
mother, yeah.
Tagesmutter, I don't know.
We
A
call them
nunu.
Nunu, which is really funny because Nunox is how you say teddy bear. So it's kind of similar to teddy bear, um, but yeah. So she only had two other children, or three other children. I can't remember, but in her home. But Owen was in a daycare center. Um, yeah. It's so really some differences, but I also think it's just like I said, like they're different. There were personality like differences in utero. Like, and it's when like it's interesting because with time changes, Owen never really had issues adapting, and maybe that was because we went back and forth several times when he was little.
Right.
But so when he was really little and we were here for 3 months and then went back, right? Like there was always the readjustment of having of the jet lag kind of stuff. But then like the hour clock change didn't really change anything for him. Like he didn't have an adaptation. He didn't wake up. He would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. I forget. Like whatever time he like normally got up, he would get up whatever time was on the clock, regardless of whether we had like set the clocks back or forward. It was like somehow his brain just made
Can
the
do that.
adjustment. Whereas Zach,
I need that
yeah.
capability.
Whereas Zach was like, oh, it was 4 o'clock. It was 5 o'clock yesterday. It's 4 o'clock today. I'm getting up at 4 o'clock because my body's telling me it's 5 o'clock, right? Like Zach is just he's just like whatever. I don't care what the time says. Just this is how my body is and what my body's needs are. So in that way, I think Zach's more like me. Um, because I'm definitely more thrown off by time changes than I think Sean is. Like um he's more easily like I don't know, like he's less impacted by time change.
So you think it's a personality thing rather than a cultural influence?
I think there's a part to it that's probably personality. Um yeah. Yeah. But I don't know because again there's all these confounding factors like one kid was born in one place and the other kid was born in another place and um but I don't know. For me, again, I mean, I study human design. So for me, I think it has more to do with their human design, like who they're meant to be, how their energy flows naturally
Right.
in their bodies. But but yes, Zach is definitely like he's the one who will like change his clock before the neck like before like right like so Saturday he will go to bed with the new time on his watch. When we get on an airplane going to the US, he will change the time to the local time when we get on the airplane. Like he's much more
Planner.
that planner, yeah, that controller. And Owen's like, meh, I'll figure it out. Like I trust my body's rhythm. It'll be fine.
And you're saying that Zach is more like you?
Go figure. Because I'm the older child. So go figure that my younger child is more like me. But yeah. Um,
Funny.
yeah. So we'd love to hear your stories about time changes. Are you somebody who thinks that daylight savings time makes sense?
How do you do with time zones? And how do your children do with time zone changes?
Yeah.
I I do remember the one time I was in the States when I was like 12, and I came back after a month, and I slept till 1:30 in the afternoon, which is probably one of the one or two times in my life that I slept that late. Um, I, I was 12 years old, and I still remember how amazing that was that I could sleep that late.
Like, ooh, a note to self. The teen years
Yeah.
are coming. Um, yeah, yeah, and to that as well, like I guess going back to those stereotypes of your home country, like is your home country one that runs on time? Or
Yeah.
are you always running late? Or
And what
early?
do you think is nature versus nurture? Is it is that just in your makeup? You are going to be on time, even though you know the trains are not going to be on time. Like I currently have a class at German school, and they're all adults, and one person sometimes shows up on time, but most of the time they are anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes late to class. So I don't see any reason for me to get there like before the class almost starts. I give them a couple of minutes buffer time, but other than that, it's just not happening because I'm just going to be staring at the wall a little longer then.
I love it. Yes. So any thoughts you have on time, please share them with us. We'd love to hear it. And we'll see you on next time.
Send us an email at culture-parenting@gmail.com, or find us on Instagram, send us a message, Facebook. We'd love to hear from you.
We're everywhere. We're everywhere. Find us. No
Everywhere,
matter
we're
what time it
everywhere.
is. 24 hours a day.
Exactly. I don't care what time it is. And you know what? In the middle of the night, I'm usually up anyway. And then that's daytime for Marissa, and she's up. So somebody will answer you. Um, in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about what did we say we were going to talk about? I'm totally blanking now. Um, yeah. You know what? Just
You'll just have to tune in and find out what we're going to talk
yes.
about
Why
on
don't
the
you
next
find out when
episode.
I find out? Okay.
Tune into the next episode and find out what we decide to talk about because it might change between now and then anyway, um, depending
Possibly.
on time.
All righty. We will talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching and listening. Bye.